Welcome to Around the Weird. Here's your host, the museum curator of the strange and unusual, Mr. Nothing.
Thank you, mysterious voice, and welcome back to Around the Weird, a booktube channel where I talk about all the unusual and out of the ordinary literature that I have found in my travels. Today I want to talk about another manga that I read, one that is part of a series that I've been exploring to great enjoyment because it is pretty high quality. It is a series about demons and people fighting them with large swords, or just one person doing that. I am referring to Berserk, Volume 2 by Kentaro Miura, which was published in 1990. I've talked about Kentaro Miura, so I don't have to go into that great of detail. Check out my first video that I made about Volume 1 if you are interested in learning a little bit more about him. But Kentaro Miura was a manga writer writing Berserk as well as a couple of other series, and he also had a hand in movies and video games as well. A fairly interesting writer, and I like what he is doing with the Berserk series. So if you didn't watch my first video, just know that I do recommend this for interested parties out there. But without further ado, let's talk about Volume 2. I will do a summary, a little bit of analysis, and we will move on from there. So, Volume 2 of Berserk continues to follow Guts, pretty much beginning where the Volume 1 left off. Guts and the villager and Puck are looking at the Bahelite that the villager has produced. Guts is curious about it and wants to know where the villager found it, and they note that they got it from the count who is pursuing Guts at this moment. Guts reveals that the Bahelite can bring a portal that summons demons from another world, another dimension, but it can especially put one in contact with the God Hand demons, who are very powerful and control humanity in some way, and Guts is trying to bring them down. Meanwhile, the Count is again pursuing Guts, so he unleashes one of his own demons, because it turns out he's part demon now, into one of the other soldiers, Lord Zondark, who fought Guts in the previous volume and lost, and so he becomes more powerful. Guts fights this demon Zondark and manages to win, but as Guts is leaving, because he doesn't really want to avenge the villager, because that's not his job, Guts finds that the villager has been captured by the Count and is sentenced to be executed without a trial. But Guts tells Puck, because Puck tells Guts to try to intervene. Guts says that he refuses to help, and that the price of ambition is a quick death, which is, very, very harsh thing to say. And Guts sees the villager get executed. And while Guts travels to the sort of great mass grave where the villager and others who have been executed as heretics are, he finds that he is haunted by the victims, all who ask to be avenged or to be helped or to kill the Count in some way. And Guts reacts pretty violently by just telling them to all shut up. And he's going to spite the dead by killing the Count for him rather for them. And meanwhile, still, Puck is kidnapped at this point, because Puck tried to stop the villager from getting executed, but failed. And Puck is talking to the Count's daughter, who finds herself locked away ever since her father sold his soul to the demons, apparently. And so Puck talks to the child and tries to help her navigate these feelings that she's dealing with. And Guts enters the castle and fights a bunch of soldier demons and also the Count's men, and seems to, make his way through as though they aren't that big of a threat to him. And then Guts fights the Count in a very amazingly depicted battle. Pretty much all of the battles in here are depicted very well. And although Guts does get an upper hand, the Count, because he is part demon, his limbs keep regrowing, and it doesn't appear that Guts is able to defeat him. And in fact, the Count manages to get an upper hand and knock him pretty far away, to the point where it looks like Guts is struggling here, and it's left at that point at a to be continued mark that will be hopefully resolved in volume 3, and that's where it ends. In terms of analysis, there are matters to discuss here. Miura continues the sort of analysis of Guts as the unconventional hero in this volume. What makes him most likely the unconventional hero is he doesn't fight for other people. He fights for himself. He's not on the cause of good. He doesn't really believe in that good versus evil delineation, because he is, of course, the nihilistic hero. And it might not just be because he doesn't believe in good or evil. It might just be because, as I'll talk about in a few moments, he can't allow himself to believe in good or evil because the side of evil is doing really well right now, and good people are being hurt, and he might not emotionally be prepared for that. We also see that he refuses to avenge others, specifically the villagers. Like, the Count has maimed me, hurt me, taken my family. Avenge me, if not because you want to. Do it for me. Do it for the people who have died. And Guts is like, no, I'm not going to do that. That seems like a waste of my own time. I'm going to do it, but I'm going to do it for myself because only I matter in this situation. Kind of coming off like a very, jerk, like an asshole of sorts, a very unlikable protagonist. But there's a difference between Guts's words and his actions, and so we can see that he's not actually an asshole. He cares, it's just he's showing it in a very unusual kind of way. And the ghosts are asking for help later, and they even try to possess him, and he reacts pretty violently to that, as I've said earlier. He's just like, no, I don't want to do that. Get away from me. You're all dead, and I don't want to feel what you are feeling. Again, because Guts is probably feeling a lot, and he doesn't want those additional burdens on him that might hinder him in a vital fight or something like that. So he's not really fighting for the dead, he's fighting for himself, or at least that's what he says. But again, my question is this apathy, is this unconventional nature part of something deeper? And I do think that it is, that Guts is maybe afraid or something like that, which Puck points out later in the story. Allow me to read you a quote from this. "You're afraid of him, aren't you? You are afraid to admit that you're also fighting a losing battle. You don't want to admit that you're just like him. Well, then why did you come here?" Which is a very interesting kind of, argument that Puck is making. First, noting that Puck, or not Guts, might be afraid that he's no better than the old man, or that he's afraid that the old man might be better than him because the old man at least stood up for something, whereas Guts kind of refuses to do that. And Puck notes, well, you come off like devil may care, or that none of this phases you, yet you're here. You showed up to this old man's execution. You chose to fight in this fight and not leave this castle for something else. You clearly care. Why would you, if you didn't care, why would you be here? And you can tell this actually affects Guts, because he takes Puck and it throws them away. It's like, I don't care what you think. How dare you speak to me like a human would? It clearly affects him. And if you didn't feel anything there, if he was actually apathetic, as he said, he would just laugh it off, which he tries to initially. But Puck keeps at it and is like, you're not as indifferent to this cause as you think you are, which is really good writing on Kentaro's part. I was beginning to wonder what Puck's value was in this story, but it's clear she's kind of Guts' conscience, or the figure that stands out to remind him that he still cares, that there's still a very human side to him, even though he might have been changed by whatever brand is on his neck. There's also another interesting thing that's not fully developed in this volume, but there is the idea of living for the future. Specifically, Puck notes to the old man, it's not worth it to dwell in the past. You have to live for the future, live for the present, which is a very interesting quote, because that also seems like something that Guts needs to be told, because because he's clearly affected by what happened in his past with the brand. Maybe some people in his life have died, which Kentaro is slowly revealing throughout this series. Like, it's a very interesting quote that Puck says. However, it's not fully developed, as I noted. It's not really expanded upon throughout this particular volume. But I do think that nothing that Kentaro says is an accident in this series, especially because so much is spent on like the fight scenes, that any writing, you can't spare any writing. You have to be intentional with it. And I think that Kentaro is very intentional with what he chooses Puck and guts to say in these stories. So I do think that's going to come up later, but it doesn't feel fully fleshed out yet. And the last thing worth noting is, of course, the character design, which I mentioned in the first volume. I still think it is pretty great here with Guts, his kind of looking beaten down with his very large sword. Puck is very interestingly designed as well. The villager looks like he's been torn apart and just repeatedly harmed over these years, just worn down. And the Count in particular looks like a very inhuman kind of monster, especially in his demon form. I will say that his face when he's in the demon form resembles something of a Hanya mask, which I'll put up there. I don't specifically know what that represents in Japanese culture, but I do think that Kentaro wouldn't have used it unless it specifically meant something. And so I do like how he uses that design here. A lot of the demon designs here feel very intentional and wonderfully designed in that way, so as to inspire fear or resemble something from maybe Japanese mythology or folklore or something like that. And so I feel it really adds to the artwork in this volume as well. Anyway, those are my thoughts on Volume 2 of Berserk. I really enjoyed Volume 2, and I definitely recommend this series to you if you haven't already started reading it. Obviously, don't start at Volume 2, read through Volume 1, but you join me for this, and my next video will probably be Volume 3, as I purchased that when I purchased Volume 2, so be on the lookout for that. If you read this before, you simply want to comment on something I said here, do so below. Let's have a discussion about this. Otherwise, don't forget to like, share, or subscribe so that more people can find out about this manga or this author or this book if they don't already know. And until then, I wish you the best of luck in your weird and demon fighting travels. Farewell.